I'm Rabbi David Ben Eliyahu. I'm 60 years old, and what I'm about to share with you has been guarded inside Jewish communities for over 3,000 years. Not because it's a secret, but because most people aren't ready to hear it. During every economic collapse in recorded history, the fall of Rome, the Great Depression, the 2008 financial crisis, certain Jewish families didn't just survive, they built fortunes. While everyone around them was losing everything, they were buying. While the world was panicking, they were calm. And the reason is a formula, a specific ancient formula called the 373. Before I explain it, I want you to do something right now. In the comments below, type the words, "I accept my wealth." Not because it's a ritual, but because declaring your intention is the first act of discipline. And discipline, as I'll show you today, is the foundation of everything. Subscribe and turn on notifications so this teaching reaches you. Now, let me tell you what happened and why this formula changed everything I thought I knew about money. I was born and raised in Brooklyn, in a traditional Jewish household. My father was not a wealthy man. He was a tailor. He worked 6 days a week with his hands, and on Shabbat he rested. We were not poor, but we were careful. Every dollar had a name. Every purchase had a reason. And from the time I was a small boy, I watched my father do something that I didn't fully understand until I was much older. Every week, without exception, he divided his earnings into 3 envelopes. He never explained it. He never sat me down and gave me a lecture. He just did it, week after week, year after year. 3 envelopes on the kitchen table. And then one day, when I was maybe 12 years old, I asked him. I said, "Abba, why 3 envelopes? Why not just put it all in one place?" He looked at me and he said, and I remember this clearly, he said, "David, a river that flows in one direction can be dammed. A river that flows in 3 cannot." I didn't understand it then. I was 12. I thought he was being poetic, but I never forgot those words. Years later, I became a rabbi. I spent my 30s and 40s counseling families, not just on matters of faith, but on matters of life. And money, whether people admit it or not, is always a matter of life. I sat across from hundreds of families over the years, educated people, hard-working people, people who earned good money, and almost every single one of them came to me with the same problem. They had nothing to show for it. They earned, they spent, they hoped. They earned more, they spent more, they hoped more. And they wondered why, after 20 or 30 years of work, they were still one bad month away from disaster. Here's the thing. It was never about how much they made. It was about whether their money had structure. And most people's money had none. That's when I remembered the 3 envelopes. Now let me tell you about a man I'll call Solomon. He was 52 years old when he first came to sit in my office. He was an accountant, successful, respected in his field. He wore a nice watch. He drove a nice car. He spoke with confidence. But when I asked him to show me where his money went each month, he went quiet. He said, "Rabbi, I make good money." I said, "I didn't ask what you make. I asked where it goes." He couldn't tell me, not clearly. He had a vague idea. Mortgage, bills, food, some savings, but no structure, no system, no clarity. He was earning well and building nothing. I told him about my father's 3 envelopes, and then I told him what those envelopes actually represent, what Jewish tradition has known for centuries. The first 3 is protection. 3/10 of everything you earn goes to protection, your safety net, your emergency reserve, your foundation. In ancient times, this was grain stored against drought. Today, it's the fund that means you never have to panic. You never have to make a desperate decision. You never have to beg. 3 parts out of 10, every time, before anything else. The 7 is structure. 7/10 of your income runs your life, your obligations, your household, your needs, not your wants, your needs. 7 parts to live on. And here's what most people don't realize. When you've already set aside your 3, living on 7 doesn't feel like deprivation. It feels like clarity, because every dollar in that 7 has a job. The chaos is gone. And then the second 3. This is the one that builds dynasties. 3 parts out of every 10 that come back to you are set aside for growth, not savings. Growth, invested, multiplied, left alone to compound while you sleep. This is the number that made Jewish families wealthy across generations, not because they earned more than everyone else, because they never stopped feeding the growth envelope. 3, 7, 3. Protection, life, growth. It sounds simple, and it is. That's the point. Solomon looked at me and said, "Rabbi, that's only possible if you have enough money coming in." And I said, "Solomon, I have seen this formula work on a salary of $800 a month and on a salary of $80,000 a month. The formula doesn't care about your income. It cares about your obedience." He didn't like that word, obedience. Most people don't, because it implies that you have to give something up. And in the short term, you do. You give up the randomness. You give up the emotional spending. You give up the false comfort of pretending money doesn't need a structure. But what you get back is far greater. Let me take you deeper into this, because the 373 is not just a budgeting system. It's rooted in something much older. In the Torah, in the book of Bereshit, Genesis, we read about Joseph, the son of Jacob. This young man, sold into slavery by his own brothers, rose to become the second most powerful man in Egypt. And here's what most people miss about that story. Joseph didn't become powerful because of a miracle. He became powerful because of a system. Pharaoh had a dream. 7 fat cows devoured by 7 thin cows. 7 full ears of grain consumed by 7 thin ears. And Joseph interpreted it. 7 years of abundance, followed by 7 years of famine. And then, this is the part that matters, he immediately said to Pharaoh, "Collect 1/5 of the harvest during the 7 good years. Store it, protect it, so that the land will not perish in the famine." 1/5, 20%, stored, protected, before the need arose. That is the 373 in its earliest form. You see, the Jewish approach to wealth has never been about getting rich quickly. It has never been about speculation or luck or timing the market perfectly. It has always been about one thing: building a structure that survives collapse. Every economic collapse in history has a pattern. Confidence rises. People stop saving. They spend on the expectation of continued abundance. And then the contraction comes, as it always does, and those without structure are destroyed. But families with structure, families who had been filling the first envelope, funding the growth envelope, and living faithfully within the 7. They had cash when assets were cheap. They had calm when others were panicking. They bought when everyone else was selling. And they came out of every storm stronger than they went in. This is not theory. I have watched this happen with my own eyes. In 2008, I counseled a couple, both in their mid-40s, 2 children in school. The husband had been practicing the 3-7-3 for nearly 15 years. When the market collapsed, he lost value on paper. Of course he did. Everyone did. But he had his protection envelope fully funded. 6 months of expenses, untouched. And his growth envelope, his investments, he didn't sell. He didn't panic. He bought more because he could. Within 4 years, his portfolio had not just recovered, it had tripled. His neighbor, same neighborhood, similar income, same market conditions, sold everything in February 2009 at the bottom. Lost years of gains. It took him a decade just to get back to where he started. Same storm, different structure, completely different outcome. Now let me talk about the part of this formula that most people ignore. And it's the part that honestly breaks my heart when I see people skip it. The growth envelope only works if you leave it alone. This is where discipline becomes the highest form of intelligence, because the human mind is wired to see growth and want to touch it, to spend it, to use it. You look at that investment account and you think, I could fix the kitchen. I could take the vacation. It's right there. And that is exactly how generational wealth dies. Not in one catastrophic decision, in 100 small ones. The Talmud teaches, and I want you to hear this carefully, the Talmud teaches that a person who borrows from their future has already begun to steal from their children. That's a hard statement, but it's precise. Every time you raid your growth envelope for something that feels urgent today, you are stealing from the version of yourself or your children who needed that compound growth in 15 years. I worked with a woman once, a school teacher, single, raising 1 daughter. She came to me at 45 years old. She had no savings, nothing. She felt hopeless. She said, Rabbi, I missed my window. I said, no, you're 45, not 85. You still have 20 years of compounding in front of you. But you have to start now, today, not next month. We set up the 373 on her teacher's salary. It was tight the first year. She had to make real choices. No cable subscription, cooking at home, a smaller apartment. She called me after about 3 months and said, Rabbi, this is hard. I said, yes, and it's working. She trusted the structure. She didn't touch the growth envelope, not once. She added to it every month without fail. When she retired at 65, she had more money saved than she ever imagined possible on a teacher's salary. Her daughter didn't have to worry about her. She didn't have to worry about herself. 20 years of discipline, that's all it took. If you're watching this right now and you're thinking, I've never had a system like this, I want you to hear me very clearly. It's not too late. Wealth is built in silence, lost in emotion. The market will go up and it will go down. Your income will fluctuate. Life will bring emergencies. None of that matters as much as whether your money has structure. A river that flows in 3 directions cannot be dammed. Here's what I want you to do. Starting with your very next paycheck, not the one after that, this next one, I want you to divide it. 3 parts to protection, 7 parts to live, 3 parts to grow. If you're in debt, Your protection envelope goes to eliminating that debt first, because debt is a dam on your financial river. Once the debt is gone, the protection envelope becomes your foundation. Don't make it complicated. 3 envelopes, literal or digital, it doesn't matter. The structure is everything. And here is the thing I tell every person I counsel. You don't chase money. You build systems that attract it. The 373 is not about earning more. It's about being worthy of what you already earn. Because God, or the universe, or the market, call it what you like, does not multiply what is wasted. It multiplies what is stewarded. Every dollar must serve a purpose, or it will serve your weakness. That is not my wisdom. That is 3,000 years of hard-earned Jewish truth. My father never became a wealthy man by the world's standards. He was a tailor until the day he retired. But when he passed, he left my mother completely provided for. He left no debt. He left a small inheritance for his children. And he left us this formula, written on nothing, stored in no bank, but carried in the memory of a 12-year-old boy who never forgot 3 envelopes on a kitchen table. That is generational wealth. Not always in dollars, sometimes in the knowledge of how to build dollars. And that knowledge, that structure, is what I am passing to you today. If this teaching meant something to you, I need you to comment right now with the words, "I accept my wealth." Say it in the comments. Make it a declaration, because your words and your actions have to move in the same direction. Subscribe to this channel and turn on notifications. Every week I bring teachings like this one, ancient principles that apply to your life today, whether you're 25 or 65. There is no age at which wisdom stops being useful. Hit the like button if this gave you something to think about. Share this video with someone you care about, a friend, a sibling, a child who's just starting out. Send it to the person who needs to hear that structure is the beginning of freedom. And if you have a story, if you've lived through financial collapse, or you've used a system like this and it changed your life, there is a form in the description. Fill it out. Your story may become the teaching that saves someone else. Patience is not passive. It is strategic. The 373 is patient money. And patient money, my friend, always wins. Shalom.